Well, we'll delve into it. We're in Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is awesome, part 3. Awesome, part 3. In this session, we're looking at verse 3, that he restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Periodically, things happen to us that we didn't calculate, that we didn't see coming. God even hides things from prophetic people because God will not be figured out by human minds. There is a mysterious element in God that is beyond our ability to find out. The full expression of who God is unfathomable. There are the unsearchable riches of his glory. We will never know. God is too multifaceted. He's too deep. He has too many layers for us. Once you peel one back, you'll discover another one. And just when you thought that God had shown you all that there was to see, bam, you see something else. And you get a certain age, and then you'll realize, I've never been here before, and God is teaching me. Anybody ever been that way where God is showing you some stuff because you're at a place in your life now where you've never been before? But things happen that knock the wind out of us. They stun us. They discourage us. They frustrate us. They confuse us. It frightens us, and it has an impact on our soul. So we can be so busy taking care of things and everyone else that we neglect our soul. And so we give ourselves so completely to our work, the raising of our families, the maintaining of our homes, the volunteering for the various things that we often forget to take time to nourish our soul. And let me just say this to you, that it is better for a person to lose sleep than for them to lose their soul. The soul is comprised of the mind, the will, the intellect, the emotions, and your imagination. All of these elements comprise the human soul. These things work out of the soul of man. And so God says that he has to lead us beside the still waters to restore our soul so you can get your mind back. You see, every time that you lay with somebody that you don't have covenant with, you lose a little piece of your soul, and you connect with a piece of their soul, and that's where you get soul ties, and you get stuff connected in you, and you don't know why you can't stop thinking about this person. There are people that then become addicted to things that happen because of the exchange in a soulish realm that happens, and powerful soul ties can be established in a human life. And so God has to lead us to a place. It's a place that takes us out of the place where something happened, and God has to restore us in that place where still waters run deep. A soul is that part of us. It is that element in us that animals do not have. Animals don't have souls. They're just creations that are living, but they don't have this soul, this mind, this will, this intellect, this emotion. You don't see dogs and kangaroos with an imagination of building some type of special kind of doghouse or a special kind of terrain for a kangaroo to hop around in. That's left to human beings. And so God deemed the soul of human beings being restored to be so important that he listed it in the Ten Commandments by the observation of the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy ox, nor thy donkey. I don't use that kind of language. I know some people that are fluent in King James Version of the scriptures. I mean absolutely fluent. But God put it in the Ten Commandments to take time to have a Sabbath to get your mind back, to worship God, to be restored. And remember that the people who received the Ten Commandments, they had grown up as slaves. And that means that somebody else owned their time. So they couldn't just do what they wanted to do with their time. When you're a slave, somebody else owns your time. And when God used Moses to free them, then they could use that time for their own purposes. And so this is why 3,000 years after the event, a Jewish family would welcome the Sabbath as a reminder to them of their liberation from Egyptian slavery. So they welcomed the Sabbath, not as a torment, not as a punishment, not as an obligation. It is a time of refreshment. Remember, the psalmist here said that he makes me lie down. God mandated a Sabbath for us. Now let me say this to you. You must either slow down or you will break down. You have to learn how to slow down. I don't care what it is that you do and how much you love it. If you do it too much, you will lose who you are by doing it. And you're not supposed to lose yourself doing the it. I don't care if it's the ministry. You don't lose yourself doing the ministry. You don't lose yourself doing the marriage. You got to be a whole person. If you're not whole, you don't have anything to give. So you have to give a wholeness of yourself. You know, when I got married, I wasn't looking for this other person to complete me as though I was an unwhole individual. And let me tell you this, I wasn't looking for anybody who was sick either. I didn't want to be putting somebody else together to try to mix with me, because two whole people coming together make a whole relationship. You can't just bring broken people together and expect them to be whole. So there has to be a healing. There has to be a restoration. You wait for God to restore you, then bring wholeness together so that you don't bring the sickness of who you were and what happened to you into a relationship. You have to get whole. You have to get whole. And so he mandates a Sabbath for us. Our Sabbath should be a day to replenish our soul. That means that this ought to be a weekly activity. Now, the Sabbath is a time for worship. The Sabbath is a time for family. The Sabbath is a time for reading. The Sabbath is a time for relaxing. The Sabbath is a time for being free of whatever your daily routine is, that on this day you don't do what you do all the other days. It is a break from that. You have to understand that a vacation is not inactivity, it is a change of activity. Anybody ever go on vacation and you come back tireder than when you went physically because you were just doing stuff, just busy? So, but you can still be refreshed, because vacation is not a change of activity. It's not an inactivity. It's just a change of activity. So our Sabbath, that's a time just for worship, for family, for reading, for friends, for relaxing. It is a time for just being free of whatever is your daily routine. Everybody needs a Sabbath. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how strong you are, how anointed you are. Everybody needs a Sabbath. You'll either slow down or you will break down. And so we need to define ourselves other than something that we do as our work, lest we lose our soul in the process. Lest we lose our soul in the process. I mean, if you only define yourself by your work, then who are you when you are not at work? Who are you when you retire? You can quit what you do, but you cannot quit who you are. And so I would never allow people to wrap my identity as to who I am in what I do. I told you I grew up and I'd be on our truck and we'd go into different neighborhoods in different cities, different states around the country, selling our products. And I would hear young people looking, because we had all kind of stuff on the side of our truck, and they would say, "Here come the grease man, here come the grease man, here come the grease man." I'm not a grease man. Grease is what we sell. That's not who I am. Don't ever get twisted with what you do with who you are. If you fry chicken, you're not a chicken any more than sleeping in the garage makes you an automobile. So don't confuse what you do with who you are. But there are some people that put their soul into what they do that they lose the identity of who they are. And those are the ones that end up burning out and becoming confused and not knowing how to let go when it's time to let go. So everybody needs a Sabbath, because you are not what you do. You are not what you do. Tell somebody near you, you are not what you do. You are not what you do. You are not what you do. You are more than what you do. You're potential. You've got capacity. You are more than what you do. And isn't it amazing to us? God, an eternal spirit. This is God, the eternal spirit, that after he created the earth, what did he do? He rested. He rested. Exodus chapter 31, verse 17, notice this. He told them about the Sabbath, and he said, "It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed." Do you notice that? God rested and was refreshed. Now, if God himself had to rest and be refreshed, how much more do you and I? We must have a time of rest, this place where he restores my soul. To restore can only come through a rest. He restores. Restores. The root of that is rest. You cannot restore something without resting it. If you're still working it, you can't restore it. You have to rest something in order to restore it. So he is our Sabbath. He's our Sabbath. He's our Sabbath. In the Hebrew, the verbs referring to God resting and God being refreshed are the word Shabbat. It means he stopped. He stopped. He Shabbat. He stopped. God stopped. He stopped. He stopped it. Now, if God had to stop, it is that word Shabbat where we get the word Sabbath. And then the other word that he was refreshed is a Hebrew word, yenafash. And that particular word means he got his soul back. Can you imagine? God put his soul into his creation. And he had to take a Shabbat, he had to take a Sabbath to rest himself, to stop and cease from his labor in order to get his soul back, because he had put so much of his soul into his creation. Everything, the heavens declare the glory of God. The trees lift their branch in his honor. God infused into his creation his very soul, his mind, his will, his intellect, his intelligence. And that's why you don't find stupid trees. And they don't have to figure out how to reproduce, because God built into the DNA of the animal, the DNA of the plant, the tree, to reproduce after its own kind. God put intelligence in it. He put intelligence in the whole ecosystem that he created. When God flung the sun in the sky, he knew that it had to be 93 million miles away from the earth. If we were 1 million miles closer, we'd burn up, and if it was 1 million miles farther, we'd freeze to death. This thing was created in an orderly and organized way because God himself put his own soul into his creation, to the degree that he had to stop and be refreshed, get his soul back. God had to do it. Now, if God had to do that, what about me and you? My God, what do you do to refresh yourself? That's the question. What do you do to refresh yourself? What do you do to refresh yourself? Whenever you lose somebody that you love through death, if you lose somebody that you love through divorce, if you lose somebody that you love through some other circumstance, you can be in love with somebody in school and then they move to another city. They can move to another school. There are different circumstances that cause us to lose people that we love. And whenever that happens, we feel that our soul has been diminished. Whenever you lose people that you love, something in your soul is diminished. But you know why? Because human souls are nourished by love that comes through relationships. Human souls are nourished by love. They are nourished by love. That's why we get sick in isolation. You have to have contact with other people. We get sick in isolation. If a baby is born and if that baby does not have human contact, being healthy in its birth will wind up dying because it starves for nutrition. It is interesting that when a babe is born and he's nursing at his mother's breast, God knew the exact distance that the baby needed to be able to focus his mother's face. A baby, newborn, cannot focus any farther than from his breast to the mother's face. It's about the distance that a baby can focus. And God put it that way so that as the milk is nourishing the body, the mother's countenance is nourishing the baby's soul. A baby can look in its mother's eyes and see and feel when the mother wants the child. And her smile coming to her baby emotionally nourishes the baby. Her countenance nourishes the baby's soul. Her milk nourishes the baby's body. So God himself knew that we need the nourishing of the soul. And that's why you need to see people close enough where you can touch them. Don't get so hung up in the digital world, because you can't really make love online. Not for real, for real. You need to be able to have human contact because of proximity. Relationship demands proximity. See, it's interesting. So God uses other human relationships to show love and concern to us and thereby heal our soul. God uses people often to be able to restore and to heal damaged, wounded souls that have been diminished. And here's the good thing about it. When you use the love that is in your heart to help nourish another soul, it doesn't diminish you. Love and strength in other human beings, when you think of that, love and strength, they are not like bank accounts that diminish the more you use them. But they are more like muscles that grow the more that you use it. The more you use your love, the more your love grows. You can't run out of love, not when you're connected to God. The more you use your love, the more your love grows. It's like a muscle. It grows through use. The more you use your compassion, the more compassion that you have. The more that you use goodness, the more goodness that you have. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the more it develops. You know, from a shepherd, I learned that sheep need to be restored whenever they become, it's an old English term, whenever they become cast, C-A-S-T. A cast is an old English shepherd's term. It means it refers to a sheep that is turned over on its back and it can't get back up on its feet. And that would often happen to sheep. They would become cast. And if the owner didn't come on the scene in a hurry, within a short time, oftentimes within a matter of hours, the sheep would die. A healthy sheep just becoming cast, falling over on their back, and they can't even get back up on their feet anymore. And not only does the shepherd have to keep a keen eye looking out for sheep that have become cast, but he's also, if the sheep has become cast, he's got to watch the buzzards and the vultures and the dogs and the wolves and the cougars, because the sheep is the prey, and the sheep on its back It's totally helpless. They can't even run. So he has to have a keen eye looking out for cast sheep. And there are different things that cause us as human beings to become cast, where we flip over on our backs. We're flat on our backs and we can't even get on our feet. 3 conditions that cause sheep to become cast. Here they are. Number 1 is that sheep that are overweight are often the easiest to become cast because of their weight. And so they turn a curve too fast and they flip over on their back. They can't get up. They're like the lady in the commercial. I've fallen and I can't get up. And what happens is that while the sheep is cast, there is a gas that builds up in their stomach. And these gases start expanding, and then they tend to cut off the blood circulation to the extremities of the body of the animal, especially the legs. And if the weather is very hot, then that sheep can die within a very few hours, just because it fell over on its back. And then the gases that are released in its system begin to cut off the circulation, and it will die because it cannot get up. And see, this is what happens. If you fall down and if your blood stops, when your relatives, when your family won't help you, when you got an issue with your blood and you're cast, you're on your back and you need help and your family won't even help you. When you're cast, you die laying there in a hot situation. Here's the second condition. Sheep that have too much wool can become easily cast. Their wool is heavy. It becomes matted. And so they can get mud in it. They can get manure in it. They can get other debris in it that's simply too heavy. And when this happens, the sheep can easily fall over on its back just because it's heavy wool. And wool in the scripture is a picture of something. It is a picture of the old life of a Christian. The old life. It's like returning to your former life. That's what the wool is a sign of. That's why sheep are sheared. It's like the removing of the old life. It's like a snake that sheds its skin. So it is the removing of that. But when a sheep's, when their wool becomes too heavy, too much, they can easily become cast because the hair starts matting. They get mud in it. They get the density of water in it. And they can just flip over on their back and they cannot get to their feet again. The third condition is that sheep that choose the comfortable round hollows in the ground in which to lie down can easily become cast. Isn't that interesting? That in such a condition, it's very easy for them to just roll over on their back because they got in a comfortable position and now become cast. The same thing happens to Christians. If Christians ever get too comfortable, you can roll over and become cast where you can't even get up. Then God has to lift us up in order to restore us. There are so many things that can damage our soul. Various things can damage our soul. The death of a loved one. Divorce, breaking the 10 commandments. I mean, lying, murder, adultery, theft, dishonoring God, dishonoring parents, greed. These things damage your soul. You damage your soul every time you break the law. Keeping the law is not just about doing something that is legalistic. It's about preserving your soul. When you break the commandments, you damage your soul. Envy, gossip, unforgiveness, anxiety, worry, involvement in the occult, demons, trauma. All of these things damage the soul. A person can get raped, their soul is damaged. They can be beaten severely, physical torture. They can have verbal abuse. That traumatizes a person. It's amazing how the negative words of parents and guardians spoken over children becomes their inner voice. You know why? Because you've programmed their mind, you've damaged their soul. And when people have heard negative words spoken, the psychologists tell us that it takes about 11 positive statements to undo the damage of one negative statement. 11 positive statements to undo the damage of one negative statement. Because negative words can begin to damage your soul, particularly once you take those words in and internalize them. And what other option do children have when negative people are speaking their own mindset into the life of another child. And so soul wounds can happen. Soul wounds, they can happen. And when they happen, they affect how you think and they affect how you react in certain situations. And so it is during this time that we need our soul restored, because sin can damage you. Sin can distract you. It can disorganize you. It can depress you. It can delay you. And it can ultimately destroy you. Sin. This is what sin does. It damages your soul. It distracts you, disorganizes you, it depresses you, it delays you, and it will destroy you. This is what sin will do. But after our souls are restored by God leading us to still waters, then we are ready to follow the Lord as He leads us in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. And whatever righteousness is attained in our life for and to the glory of God, that's its purpose. Whatever restoration that God brings, it is only to His glory and for His glory that God restores human souls. And it's interesting that sheep are notorious creatures of habit, because if left to themselves, do you know a sheep will follow the same trail until those trails become ruts, and they will graze in the same hills until they turn into a desert wasteland, because they are such creatures of habit. That's why the shepherd has to lead them into green pastures, because if they stay in the same place, they'll do the same things over and over and over and over again. They are creatures of habit. Isn't it amazing that we are human beings are just like these sheep?
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. We pray that this message has encouraged, equipped, and empowered you to live a more victorious life. Join us next time for Power for Living with Dale C. Bronner, where revelation is power. Power for Living.